Welcome to Hannity. And tonight, the gaslighting from Democrats, the mob, and the media is reaching record levels. We have fake hysteria, crocodile tears, analogies now to 9/11, Pearl Harbor, and even the Holocaust, complete with a special performance from the cast of Hamilton. It's a clown show on a spectacular level. And coming up, we're going to bring you much-needed truth into this conversation. We will point out all the rank hypocrisy, the double standards, the lying, the grandstanding, and who really is responsible for not protecting the Capitol that the mob will never talk about, that the commission will never investigate, or committee will never investigate. Former Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense, Kash Patel, he will be here, and he will explain how Donald Trump, 2 days prior to January 6th last year, wanted to call in 20,000 National Guard troops before the January 6th date. Nancy Pelosi and the D.C. mayor, that's Bowser, refused the Guard. In other words, this was all completely preventable, except Democrats rejected the protection. We'll also get insight from Congressman Jim Jordan and Congressman Jim Banks. They were booted from the fake January 6th committee so they could stack the deck 100% against Donald Trump. And we'll hear firsthand from families of the victims of the 574 violent riots from the summer of 2020. Where is the committee investigating all of those riots with dozens of dead Americans, thousands of injured cops? Now, you remember that at the beginning, for example, the riots, the fake news referred to as fiery, but mostly peaceful. You know, the reporter would have a big fire behind them, but said it's mostly peaceful. All told, thousands of police were injured, some very severely, in the fiery but peaceful protests, as they said. Dozens of Americans dead. There were over 600 arson attacks. 97 police vehicles were lit on fire. A police precinct was burned to the ground. A federal courthouse in Portland was set ablaze, well, pretty much every night for months. Dozens of businesses were burned beyond repair. Entire city blocks were taken over by criminals in Seattle in the autonomous Chaz Chop Summer of Love Zone. There were over 2,000 incidents of looting and over $2 billion in property damage. Rioters even attacked the White House with the president and his family inside. Look at this picture on your screen. This was May of 2020. Violent demonstrators, called peaceful by Democrats and the mob and the media, attempting to break through a Secret Service barricade adjacent to the White House grounds. Some even managed to set historic St. John's Church on fire. The situation was so dangerous, the president and his family were forced to flee to a secure bunker. Ultimately, 60 Secret Service officers, they sustained injuries in the attack. 11 were transported to a local hospital. But according to Democrats, the media mob, the January 6th committee, this never happened. Where is the committee investigating this? Take a look for yourself.
Shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
Violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? There's riots.
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives. And unfortunately, there's plenty to go around.
Now, then Senator Kamala Harris, she even took it a step further. She promoted the bail fund for the violent rioters. And in June of 2020, in the middle of those riots, she told Stephen Colbert, they're not going to stop. They shouldn't stop. We're not going to stop. Take a listen.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not. This is a movement. I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
Beware, take note. They're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. Then promoting a bail fund, people involved in the burning down of a precinct and the disaster that was Minnesota at the time. Well, now, when are we going to have the committee investigate Vice President Kamala Harris While Kamala Harris reveled in the violence, President Trump, he was attempting all through the summer of 2020 to restore law and order all across the country. He was trying to use every tool at his disposal, including the National Guard. And after a long summer of large violent demonstrations, President Trump knew how important it was to always prepare for the worst ahead of any massive demonstration. You always have bad actors, unfortunately. 2 days before January 6, 2020. We can now report tonight completely, and we will have it backed up in a minute, that Donald Trump authorized up to 10 or 20,000 National Guard soldiers to protect the Capitol. The Capitol Police Chief also requested the National Guard not once, not twice, not 3 times, 6 separate times. Both Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., Bowser, they needed to sign off on the president's order, and both rejected these requests again and again. By doing so, they left the Capitol totally vulnerable, and as we now know, it was breached within mere seconds. Kash Patel, who will join us in a moment, provided us a document showing Bowser's rejection. And when will Nancy Pelosi and Mayor Bowser be subpoenaed to testify before this holier-than-thou, sanctimonious January 6th committee that has the likes of Adam Schiff, the guy that lied for 3+ long years about election integrity issues that never happened? He lied over and over again about Trump-Russia collusion. Now, likely they'll never do it. And ask yourself this question. If the true purpose of the committee is to understand what happened so that it can never happen again, how can you possibly ignore the issue of rejecting the National Guard that the president called up? The only reason I can think of is the committee is playing partisan politics, and it has a predetermined outcome. All they want to do is bludgeon and blame Trump again. Everybody on the committee voted to impeach Trump his post-presidential service. The books are cooked. That's why Congressman Jim Jordan and Congressman Jim Banks were barred from the committee. We'll hear from them tonight. Keep in mind, every single member of the January 6th committee, as I said, 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans, they all voted to impeach Donald Trump. And over the weekend, one of those committee members, Liz Cheney, said her goal was to block President Trump from ever getting near the White House again. Earlier today, in a highly divisive speech, Joe Biden echoed Cheney's fever dreams and accused Donald Trump of doing nothing to protect the Capitol. We now know that's false. Take a look.
We didn't see a former president who had just rallied the mob to attack, sitting in the private dining room off the Oval Office in the White House, watching it all on television and doing nothing for hours as police were assaulted, lives at risk, the nation's capital under siege.
Rally to attack. Many of you will now peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol so your voices can be heard. Calling up the National Guard, is that rallying an attack? Now, had Pelosi and Bowser actually listened to Donald Trump, knowing that we had 574 riots over the summer previously, knowing there was a big march planned for that day, knowing that it's sadly pretty predictable when you have a large crowd that there will always be bad actors, knowing tensions were high in the country post the 2020 election, all of this could have been prevented. Donald Trump authorized the National Guard, all while Democrats blocked his efforts to secure the Capitol. And don't forget, Trump said, again, many of you will now peacefully, patriotically march to the Capitol so your voices may be heard. But of course, those words don't matter, do they, to Democrats that have an agenda? The Democratic Party, they never let truth and facts get in the way of a good narrative. Look at, for example, over at MSDNC, they actually had a historian comparing January 6th to the Holocaust? Take a look.
We have film footage of what happened on January 6th. We have proof. Dwight Eisenhower during World War II made sure all the Holocaust camps were filmed. So we've got the film footage. My worry is, what do we call this and make sure we honor this day, this dark stained day every year? So we've got to keep saying January 6th. I think it is like December 7th, Pearl Harbor, and it is like the 9/11 tragedy.
Now, today, Vice President Kamala Harris also made a pretty horrible comparison herself By the way, this is the person that tweeted out, oh, support the bail fund for the people involved with the peaceful protesting riots. Same person that said they're not going to stop, they shouldn't stop, we're not going to stop. Take a look.
Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
Now, 2,403 Americans died at Pearl Harbor. I know it pretty well. My father served in the Pacific for 4 years, and nearly 3,000 were murdered on 9/11/2001. Dozens of Americans were killed in the summer riots of 2020 that Kamala Harris cheered on. So please spare us the low-class theatrics, Kamala, because you know what? You're looking pretty stupid right now. Take a look.
My thoughts immediately turned not only to my colleagues, but to my staff, who had been forced to seek refuge in our office, converting filing cabinets into barricades.
This is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop.
The lawlessness, the violence, the chaos.
And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day.
The violent assault that took place here, the very fact of how close we came to an election overturned, that reflects the fragility of democracy.
And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
Let me be clear also tonight. Unlike Kamala Harris and most of the Democrats, we have been extraordinarily consistent. We do not on this program let politics determine whether one riot's a good one or a bad one. There's no such thing. In real time on my radio show, this is from January 6, 2021. As the events of that day were unfolding, this is what I was saying.
I've seen one or two videos of some vandalism. Every good, decent, honorable American would condemn all violence and urge any protesters that want to go down that road. You know, I see a lot of older people, moms and dads and families and stuff, but there's always going to be the agitators in some of these groups. The people that seem to always want to praise peaceful protesters are the media and the Democratic Party, because they went to great lengths to defend, and even instances where there was violence, they didn't condemn the violence. I condemn anybody involved in any incident involved in violence. It's that simple. We got to protect everybody, and I don't care whether you agree with somebody or disagree. Protect our police. You got to protect kids that are at this rally and older people that are at this rally.
And I went on to say the Capitol and our elected officials. And here's how we covered it the night of January 6th, right here on this show. Those who truly support President Trump, those that believe they are part of the conservative movement in this country, we do not support those that commit acts of violence. People we don't believe should be vandalizing our nation's capital, attacking the brave men and women that keep us safe in law enforcement, and all of today's perpetrators must be arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But every good and decent American, we know, will and must condemn what happened at the Capitol. And moving forward, we have got to do a dramatically better job protecting the innocent men and women who work there. We've got to protect our law enforcement officers. We've got to protect every single elected member of the Congress and Senate. This is not politics. They deserve to be protected. Yeah, that's right. The media mob's been lying about me all week. We've been incredibly consistent all throughout. They're the hypocrites. They had a very different standard in the summer of 2020. We've been honest about it. January 6th, the riots of summer of 2020. Democrats, the media mob, nope, they haven't been consistent. They want you to believe that January 6th was an insurrection. They want Trump locked up and barred from ever running again. They want to purge him from the Republican Party, which is what committee members now want. Why are they ignoring Trump's call for the National Guard 2 days prior? Why won't they call as a witness or subpoena Nancy Pelosi and Mayor Bowser? Look at the CBS poll that came out, buried by the news organization or so-called news organization. A vast majority of Americans believe January 6th was a protest that went too far. However, according to the political class, this was a violent insurrection caused by Donald Trump, who called for peaceful protests carried out by a group of people who refused to accept the results of 2020. We've been hearing all day that anyone that ever cast doubt on election results is a monster. Democrats, they've never done the same. You might remember the dirty dossier bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton that accused Donald Trump of being a Russian asset and how Russia helped him win the election in 2016. You might remember the years and years of claims that President Trump's election was illegitimate. Biden and Harris, they themselves echoed this dangerous lie. They accused Donald Trump of cheating with Putin's help. All of this has now been debunked completely. And they said it over and over again. And then Adam Schiff's, another Schiff show. He sits on the committee when he led the effort, led the lying, the conspiracy theories, the hoax. And we never talk about that. Take a look.
I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
The president is an illegitimate racist occupying the White House who has defined himself over and over again.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did.
But the Russian weighing in on the election, the Russian attempt to have the election, and frankly, the FBI's weighing in on the election, I think makes his election illegitimate.
He's illegitimate. And my biggest fear is that he's going to do it again with the help of Vlad, his best pal, and we're going to be stuck for 6 more years with this guy. And that is terrifying. It's terrifying.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
That was a 3+ year lie by Democrats, yes, questioning the legitimacy of the 2016 election. The media, they lied right along with them. The worst offender in spreading the lie, the congenital liar, Adam Schiff, and he's on the January 6th committee. It doesn't get any more sick or ironic than that. And then there's Stacey Abrams herself. God bless her. She still thinks she's the rightful governor of Georgia. Take a look.
This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that.
But will I say that this election was not tainted, was not a disinvestment and a disenfranchisement of thousands of voters? I will not say that.
Do you think the vote was stolen from you? The election was stolen from you?
I think the election was stolen from the people of Georgia.
And she's loved by all the Democrats. They all like Stacey Abrams. The 2016 election, we won't talk about that. Democrats have challenged every single election loss in modern American history. Here's a headline from the New York Magazine. Yes, Bush v. Gore did steal the election. Another quote, Al Gore won Florida 2000. And another, we really did inaugurate the wrong guy. Now the same media mob wants you to believe that if you question an election result, that's treason. Liz Cheney is now partnered with the very people that thought her vice president father was not legitimately elected and was, on top of that, a crook, a war criminal, a liar, and a murderer. Now Democrats want to distract from the country, Biden's failure as a president, and exploit the one riot last year to end the filibuster and pass their radical election reform. And it's not really election reform. It's an unconstitutional ploy to ban voter ID all across the country and ban partisan observers from watching the vote count, ban chain of custody mechanisms for ballots, ban updates for voter rolls, and some Democrats even want illegal immigrants to have the right to vote. In other words, they want it to be easier to harvest ballots and in some cases get illegal immigrants to vote. to the polls. And as you know, Democrats never let a good crisis go to waste. So make no mistake, January 6th is not the somber day for them that they're acting like. Sadly, they are exploiting this as a political opportunity. Otherwise, Nancy Pelosi, Mayor Bowser would be called in and they would rightly be questioned. Why did they not go along with Donald Trump's call for the National Guard? They're even celebrating with a special musical performance. We won't play it now, from the cast of Hamilton.